Have you ever wondered why many ranch owners in America keep getting richer, even though the profits from raising cattle are often not as high as people think? What makes billionaires willing to spend tens, even hundreds of millions of dollars to buy land that is nothing but pasture? Does the secret really lie in the herd of cattle? Or is there a massive wealth-generating machine silently operating behind the wooden fences? Today, we will trace every record, every piece of land, and every financial secret to uncover that surprising truth. Follow me to explore this thrilling story. Ranches do not sell cattle. They are selling something much more valuable. There is a picture that always appears in advertisements selling ranches in America. A wooden house sitting in the middle of an endless prairie. A few dozen cattle slowly grazing under the sunset. A man holding a cup of coffee standing on the porch, his face as calm as if he had nothing left to worry about. Looking at that, anyone would think this is a money printing machine. Just raise a few hundred cows and you are set for life. That is a saying I have heard countless times. But the more I traced the financial records of large ranches, the more I realized that picture only tells exactly half the story. The other half, nobody wants to put in an ad. On an early winter morning in Texas, I met Jack, who has spent over 30 years managing a ranch spanning thousands of acres. When I asked how last year's profits were, he just laughed. "Do you think the cattle make money for me?" He looked out toward the field. "If I only sold cattle, I would have closed down a long time ago." That answer made me fall silent, because just a few weeks prior, I had looked at the revenue sheet of this very ranch. The money from selling calves was barely enough to cover feed, veterinary medicine, labor, fuel, and dozens of other expenses. After adding and subtracting everything, the remaining amount was so thin that many small businesses in town made a better living. Yet the strange thing is, the ranch owners keep getting richer. They keep buying more land, keep extending the fences, keep borrowing millions of dollars to own more acres. If ranching is so low profit, why did they still jump into the game? That is the question that haunted me for months. The more I investigated, the more I discovered that everyone had been looking at it wrong right from the start. They always watch the herd of cattle, while the people who own the ranches watch the land beneath the cattle's feet. That is what they protect every day. That is the asset that investment funds, wealthy families, and even billionaires silently spend tens of millions of dollars competing to own. The cattle only appear on the surface, but the real transaction is taking place on an entirely different level. A real estate lawyer once told me a sentence that I still remember to this day. The cow is just the ticket of admission. The real asset lies where its feet are standing. At that time, I did not fully understand the meaning of that sentence, until every land record, every tax return, and every land use contract began to piece together like parts of a giant puzzle. And when that picture was complete, I finally realized a chilling truth. The thing that creates the most money on a ranch has never been the herd of cattle. ASEACHYEHYEACH, the land itself, silently creates a massive fortune. After that conversation, I no longer looked at ranches the same way. Instead of counting the cows in the field, I started flipping through every land sale record over the past 20 years. At first, everything looked very normal. A piece of land is bought. A few years later, no factories are built. No new stores are opened. There are no new products, yet its value has steadily increased. Then, another piece increases again, yet another piece still increases. The strange thing is that this pace happens very slowly, so slowly that almost no one notices. But when accumulated over 10 or 20 years, the final number is enough to leave many people stunned. Jack pulled an old yellowed map out of his desk drawer. He used the tip of his pen to circle a large plot of land. "When I bought this place, everyone said I got ripped off. Why? Because there was nothing but grass." He laughed. "Now they ask me if I am selling." He folded the map. "I only answer with one word: no." That was when I realized something very interesting. Newcomers to the industry always ask the same question: how much does the ranch make in a year? While longtime landowners ask a completely different question: how much will this piece of land be worth in 10 years? Two seemingly similar questions that lead to two completely opposite outcomes. One person only looks at this year's cash flow, the other looks at an asset spanning decades. That is also why many ranches continue to operate, even though profits from ranching are not truly outstanding. The cows still graze, the tractors still run, the workers still fix the fences after every rain. Everything goes on like a normal business. But beneath that shell, the value of the entire property silently shifts year by year. No noise needed, no billboards needed, no attention needed. An appraisal expert once told me, "Time is the hardest worker on a ranch." At first, I thought that was just a figure of speech, until I saw appraisals spaced 15 years apart. There are parcels of land that retain almost their exact shape. Still the same old dirt road. Still the same windbreak trees. Still the same faded cowshed under the sun. But the value of the entire property has multiplied many times over. Not because the cows are fatter, nor because the ranch owner works harder, but because what they own is becoming increasingly rare. Land cannot be manufactured, while the demand to own it keeps growing constantly. That is when I understood why many families can patiently hold on to a ranch for 3 generations. They are not just passing down a herd of cattle. They are passing down an asset that, with each passing year, quietly writes its own added value. And that is still not the biggest secret. Because when I traced the next streams of revenue in the ledgers, I discovered that some ranches make even more money than the land appreciation, even while the cows stand still on the exact same pasture. The real cash flow actually comes from things not found in the cattle shed. I once thought I had seen the whole picture. Land appreciates. That alone is enough to explain why ranch owners patiently keep their land through many generations. But then another file appeared on my desk. This time, it was not a land sale contract. It was a list of funds flowing into the account of a ranch in Central Texas over the course of 1 year. I skimmed through each line. Money from selling calves, money from selling hay, money from hunting leases, money from tourists, money from hosting outdoor events, money from filming rentals. I had to pause for a few seconds. What surprised me was not the amount of money, but what topped the list. It was not the cattle. Jack looked at my face and smiled. "You finally see it," he pointed at a revenue item. "Last year's deer season, the figure was enough for a small ranch to feed an entire crew of workers for many months." "Just letting people come in to hunt for a few weeks?" I asked. "Yeah, what about the cows?" "The cows are still there," he shrugged. "They did not mind." That was when I began to understand how long-time ranch owners think. They do not look at the land just as a field. They look at it as a property that can generate multiple streams of income at the same time. A pasture can feed cows. That same pasture can be cut for hay to sell when a drought year makes feed scarce. A dirt road leading into the ranch is suddenly filled on weekends with pickup trucks carrying guests wanting to experience the cowboy life. A small pond originally meant just for cattle to drink from sometimes becomes a recreational fishing spot for paying guests. Nothing much needs to be built, no production lines, no need to open more factories. It is just the exact same piece of land, but viewed from many different angles. Another manager once told me, "Do not let the land rest. It has to work every day." That saying sounded quite strange at first. Later, I understood. If the cattle only generate revenue once or twice a year, these other activities can bring in money almost year-round. When cattle prices drop, tourists still come. When the market slows down, hunting rights are still booked months in advance. If the rainy season is favorable and the grass grows well, bales of hay become a valuable commodity once again. Each source of revenue acts like a rope, keeping the entire ranch from falling when another source faces difficulties. That is also the difference between someone who just owns land and someone who knows how to exploit the land's value. One side just waits for luck from the market. The other side creates multiple doors for cash flow to find its way in. That was when I understood why some ranches look as peaceful on the outside as they did decades ago. No massive expansion of the herd, no enlargement of the barns, yet their bank accounts steadily thicken year after year. And just when I thought I had uncovered almost all those secrets, a tax expert placed a thin stack of papers in front of me and said, "These revenues are only the tip of the iceberg. The thing that helps many ranch owners keep millions of dollars actually lies in clauses that most people have never read." A thin stack of papers is worth more than a whole herd of cattle. The file the tax expert placed on the table was less than a centimeter thick. No charts, no revenue tables, no numbers stretching across dozens of pages. Just a few carefully clipped sheets of paper. He pushed it toward me. "Do you want to know why many ranch owners stay calm when ranching profits fluctuate wildly?" I nodded. He pointed at the stack of papers. "Read this first." Initially, I thought it was just some administrative paperwork. But the more I read, the more I realized this was a crucial part of the whole picture. A ranch owner does not just make money from what they sell. They also keep a lot of money thanks to regulations specifically meant for agricultural land and land preserved for its proper purpose. Jack once told me a very short sentence: if you only look at revenue, you will misunderstand the whole industry. I finally understood what he meant. Two people can both make $1 million. One person has to pay all sorts of expenses and taxes. The other person, thanks to legal asset management and maintaining the land to standards, can keep much more money. The gap lies in the amount of money kept, not the amount of money made. That is something very few outsiders see. I met another family that has owned a ranch for 3 generations. The father walked me along the old fence. He said, "Many people ask me why I do not sell the land." I asked them a question back. If I sell, what do I use to keep these benefits? He did not talk about the cows, did not talk about meat prices, nor did he mention the market. What he cared about was the legal status of the land. Because just by maintaining the correct land use purpose, many annual expenses are drastically different compared to regular plots of land. That is why many landowners continue to maintain a herd of cattle just large enough to stay operational. At first glance, everyone thinks the cattle are the center of the whole ranch. But in reality, sometimes they are like silent gatekeepers, helping the property continue to hold on to its inherent advantages. A real estate lawyer once told me, "Newcomers only see the fences. Veterans see the words behind the paperwork." It is not a trick, nor is it a hidden secret. It is all in clear regulations. The only difference is that most people have never taken the time to read through all of them. By this point, the picture was gradually becoming more complete. Land appreciates over time. The ranch generates multiple streams of income. Proper policies help owners retain more value. Every link is tightly connected to the others. But there was still one big unanswered question. If these secrets all exist publicly, why are more and more billionaires, investment funds, and famous names quietly pouring billions of dollars into ranches spanning tens of thousands of acres? They certainly are not doing it just to watch the cattle every afternoon. The answer lies on a much deeper level, where the value of a ranch is no longer measured by the number of livestock or annual revenue, but by strategic benefits that only those with massive wealth can truly see. The richest people do not buy cattle, they buy control over an entire region of land. The final question kept following me for weeks. If ranching profits are not high, if the main cash flow comes from the land, side revenues, and financial advantages, then why do billionaires keep buying more ranches? One afternoon, I stood on the balcony of a real estate office in Dallas. On the screen was a list of recently completed agricultural land deals. Their common trait made me pause. None of the buyers were farmers. Some came from the tech industry, some had built media empires, some ran investment funds. All were quietly hoarding land. "Why?" I asked the broker. He just smiled. "Do you still think they come here to raise cattle?" He turned the screen toward me. It was a satellite map, not barns, not herds of livestock, but tens of thousands of acres of land connected like a giant carpet. "What do you see?" "I only see land." "Correct," he nodded. "They also only see land." That was when I understood. When wealth has reached a massive scale, the perspective on ranches changes completely. It is no longer a place of production. It is a place to store value. A massive tract of land spanning tens of thousands of acres offers something that buildings in the city center cannot. Space, silence, distance from the crowds. No one can erect a residential area right next to the fence overnight. No one can easily change that entire vast landscape. That is the sense of control many people are willing to pay a very high price to obtain. Jack once told me during our final meeting, "The rich do not just buy assets, they buy time." It took me a long time to understand that sentence. A building must be repaired. A business must constantly compete. A product today might be very popular but will be obsolete in a few years. Meanwhile, a well-managed piece of land just silently exists. It needs no advertising, needs no chasing of trends. It just quietly increases in value through every cycle. An investment advisor once told me, "There are clients who have never set foot on their ranch. Why still buy it? Because they are buying an asset, not a vacation." That was the moment all the final puzzle pieces almost perfectly aligned. A ranch is not simply a place to raise livestock. It is the outer shell of a very resilient wealth protection system. Land continues to appreciate. Revenue streams keep operating steadily. Financial benefits keep taking effect. Privacy is almost impossible to replicate. Each individual element might not be enough to make a difference, but when combined, they turn a ranch into the kind of asset that many wealthy people want to hold onto for as long as possible. Yet, after all that, I was still missing the single most important answer. What determines whether a ranch owner will get richer or be forced to sell the very land they spent their whole life preserving? The answer does not lie in the size of the herd, nor does it lie in the number of acres. It lies in how they create multiple cash flows at the same time to survive the hardest years. Winners do not raise more cattle, they build more streams of cash. Flow. There was a detail I only noticed after comparing dozens of financial reports from ranches located across many different states. The ranches most vulnerable to crisis were not those with little land, but those with only one source of income. Just a drop in cattle prices, or a dry season lasting a few weeks longer, or feed costs rising faster than expected, the entire machinery would begin to shake. A ranch owner in Oklahoma told me in a very calm voice, "That year, I managed to sell the cows. Is that not a good thing?" He shook his head. Prices were low, while all the bills were high. He pointed toward the old barn. "The cows do not know if the market goes up or down, but the bills always know." That sentence was enough to explain why many landowners no longer consider cattle ranching the only leg of the entire ranch. They begin to build additional legs, not out of greed, but to survive. I noticed something quite fascinating. On the most efficiently run ranches, almost no piece of land is wasted. The eastern field might graze cattle in the spring. By late summer, the surplus grass is harvested to sell. An old storage shed is renovated into a weekend guest lodge. A corner of land by the lake becomes a campsite. The roads originally meant just for feed trucks sometimes host visitors' vehicles. Everything is utilized, but without affecting the main operation. Jack once said something I will always remember. If one door closes, there must be another door for money to come in. At first, I thought he was just joking around. Later, I understood that is a principle of survival. When one revenue stream struggles, another will shoulder the burden. A bad season, the remaining activities keep the cash flow moving. They might not win big every year, but they are very rarely pushed to the wall. That is exactly the difference between someone running a ranch and someone running an entire business ecosystem. They do not sell one product. They exploit the value of every square meter of land in many different ways. Each activity is like a small gear, ordinary on its own, but when operating together, the whole machine becomes much more stable. A financial advisor once closed his notebook and told me, "The strongest ranch is not the one with the biggest herd of cows. It is the one where if it loses one income source, it still has 4 others." By now, almost all the secrets behind wealthy ranches had been revealed. Land creates value. Multiple revenue streams keep the cash flow moving. Financial benefits help preserve the gains. Everything connects together like inseparable links in a chain. Yet, after months of pursuing this story, the thing that made me think the most was not found in any financial report. It was a very simple truth. Those who build massive wealth have never solely looked at the money made this year. They are always silently building a machine that can continue to generate value for many years to come, even when the market changes. The final secret lies not in the herd of cattle, but right beneath their feet. That afternoon, as I left Jack's ranch, I did not look back at the cattle anymore. What made me stop the car was the land stretching all the way to the horizon. Throughout the months of pursuing this story, I had met all kinds of people: cowboys, land brokers, lawyers, tax experts, investors. Each person only gave me a different piece of the puzzle. It was not until this moment that everything truly clicked together. Jack stepped off the porch. He asked, "So, what business do you think I am in now?" I looked out at the field one last time. "The land business," he smiled. "You finally understand." It was not a symbolic answer. It was the truth. The cattle are still very important. They help maintain operations. Keep the ranch running. Keep the cash flow uninterrupted. Keep the land being used for its proper purpose. But if you take the cattle out of the entire picture, the core value of the ranch is still there. Yet if you take the land away, everything else becomes practically meaningless. I thought back to the dozens of files I had read. There were years cattle prices rose. There were years cattle prices plummeted. There were favorable rainy seasons. There were prolonged droughts. The numbers on the revenue sheets constantly fluctuated. But one thing almost always headed in the same direction: the value of the land. And along with it came the financial benefits, the legal extraction rights, and the ability to generate multiple different revenue streams that we had sequentially uncovered. That is why the most successful people do not spend all day worrying whether cattle prices went up or down a few percent this morning. They spend more time thinking about what that land will become in 10 years. A hunting ground, a resort, an event venue, a high-quality hayfield, or simply an increasingly scarce asset. An investment advisor once closed his notebook and told me one last thing before we parted ways. Some people buy land to use. Some people buy land to pass down. But the wisest buy land because they know time will work for them. That was the clearest answer to the question that had followed me since the beginning of the story. Why do many ranch owners keep getting richer even though ranching profits are not exceptionally large? Because they never put all their hope in the herd of cattle. The livestock is just one part of the machine. The land is the core. Tax benefits help protect the gains. Multiple revenue streams help withstand tough market years, and time quietly does the rest of the work. In the end, I realized the thing most easily misunderstood by everyone about ranches in America. Outsiders see the cows. Owners see the acres of land. Both sides are looking at the exact same scene. But they are looking at two completely different businesses. Perhaps that is also why the picture of a cowboy standing in the sunset always sells dreams, while land deeds, tax records, and cadastral maps do not. But it is exactly those silent things that form the foundation for sustainable wealth across many generations. And that is also the greatest secret the endless, wide-open fields have hidden for years right under the footsteps of the cattle themselves.